Hello everyone, welcome to the computer edit drawing course. In the previous video we discussed the different command that would be used for drawing. We basically discussed the draw panel and we discussed these commands, and as we mentioned that the objective of this command is to create something, to create an object or generate an object over the AutoCAD screen. This object, as we discussed, it would be point, line, edge of a solid object, 3D object, surface of a 3D object, whatever it is. Here we are interested through these videos for now on the AutoCAD two-dimensional sketching. So draw panel, or the commands in the draw panel, they basically are used in the creation or the generation of objects in the form of line, point, circle, and so on using AutoCAD. Now we're going to move, and this is what we're going to discuss through this video, the different commands that would be used for modifying an object that we already created over the screen. As seen here, we have nothing, right? So it means that it doesn't make sense that if you decided to use any one of the commands that would found in the modify panel, because we don't have any object to modify over it. So these commands, basically, to use them, and this is going to be clear even when we use any one of these commands, that AutoCAD gonna ask us to pick an object. So we should have an object first to be able to use any one of these modify commands, and this is what we're going to discuss through this video. Then at the end we're going to have like an example as how we can create two-dimensional sketching using AutoCAD, simple two-dimensional sketching using AutoCAD. So the first command that we're going to consider here is move. Move, basically, if you just read the hint very quick, or the help, it moves objects, objects a specified distance in a specified direction. Like if you have an object and for some reason you find that this object is not in the exact location that I want, and you would like to move it to another position or another location, so you have to move the object. We can use the move command here. This move command, it is totally different than the pen here. If you just use the pen, you're already moving the sheet, the drawing sheet, like you're already drawing by hand and you're already moving the drawing sheet itself, okay? But here I'm talking about move as a command. It means that you're gonna move the object itself. You're gonna change the coordinates and the location in terms of points of the object within the drawing sheet itself. So it is physical movement of the object, but the pen is just movement of the view, how you're gonna see. For example, I'm looking to this area. How about if I'd like to see something there? So you can use the pen, like handle in this way. But move command, it moves the object physically from one location to another location. How it works, it is very simple. So let us, as I mentioned, even if you just press on move, as you can see, the cursor has been changed to a small square, and as we mentioned before, that the square and the square cursor indicate that AutoCAD asks you to pick an object. AutoCAD requires you to pick an object, and even if you read in the command window down there, you're gonna find that select move. This is the command name, and AutoCAD asks us to select objects, but we don't have any object to select. Why? And so it doesn't make sense to move something that you didn't create before. So that's why the sequence of using the commands over AutoCAD, that we have to create something using draw, then we can modify over this object using one of these modify commands. Make sense? So it means that we have to create something first. So let us, for example, draw 4 lines starting from 0, or rectangular shape, like rectangular command, and let us have the first corner at 0, 0, and the second corner, let's say, at 200, 100. Like it's gonna be like very tiny small box here. Okay, so let us assume that we already have this object, and for some reason that this corner, we created this object, that this corner, it is already at the 0, 0 location, and we found that no, this is not the correct position of this corner, and it should be shifted or displaced, whatever, in the horizontal or vertical direction with a specific distance, so we can move it. It means that we have to move the object a specific distance. If you press on move, The first thing that AutoCAD gonna ask us is gonna ask us to pick an object, select an object. So I'm going to select this object, and you have to confirm that you already choose the object. Once you select, you have to confirm. How we can confirm? We do have different options. We do have different ways. Either we can press enter or space or the right click on the mouse. All of these three gonna give the same function. All of these options like enter, space or right click, this is gonna confirm that you already choose the object, because you can choose multiple objects at the instant. As you pick an object or click on any object, you're gonna automatically select this object. So in this case we have only one object, and we choose the object that we would like to move. So I'm going to press enter or space or right click as I mentioned. Now I confirm that this is the object that I'm going to move. Then AutoCAD gonna ask me to specify base point. So what is a base point? You are going to move this object, so you have to have a point, pick a point that from which you are going to move the object. Like you're gonna assume that you're gonna carry this object and you're gonna displace or move the object into another location, right? So you need a base point to refer to. You need a base point that you're gonna move, from which you're gonna move this object. This base point, it would be any point. It would be a point that belongs to the object. It would be a point in the space, in the drawing sheet, in any area in the drawing sheet. It's up to you. So by default, AutoCAD would take the 0, point at the base point. Automatic by default, it is gonna take the 0, point at the base point. But for example, I can pick this corner as a big point, base point, or this one as a big point, this one or this one. So let us move, for example, that I'm gonna choose the end point, which is at the 0, point, this corner, to move as a base point. So I'm going to select this point here. Let me do it again. So I'm gonna pick the object. If you try to choose this one, AutoCAD kind of is gonna be confused between the XY coordinate, which are for the coordinate system, the UCS, or the corner of this rectangular shape. So I'm gonna pick the 0, point. So 0, 0 at the 0, point. Now, as you can see, it is like you already carrying the box or the rectangular shape from this point. This is the 0 point. Then it's up to you. You can move it anywhere. Once you click, so the next command here is specify second point. Specify second point, and there is an option, a default value here, use first point as displacement, and I'm gonna let you know what does it mean this. But anyway, I can move, for example, to this point or to any other point. Just click where you would like to move this object. It's up to you. Or you can just type the coordinates of the new location of this base point where it should be located. This base point was at 0, point. Now we would like to move it to another point. Just type the coordinates of the new point, or just click, left click on that point for the new location. You're gonna move the object as I did here. Make sense? How about, what about use the reference distance? For example, you can move, first of all, how about if I would like to move this box in the horizontal direction with like 200 millimeters. So I can pick, for example, this point, this base point, and you have to show, you have to move. It is better. So you're gonna put a constraint that over this box to be moved horizontal. So activate the ortho mode. Press over F8 to activate the ortho mode. Then your objective is just to type the distance. You just gonna give a distance like 200 millimeter and press enter. So this box has been displaced, shifted to the right with 200 millimeter. How about if you would like to move it or shift it to the left? You're gonna do the same. Just move, and you're gonna select the object. It's gonna ask you about the object, then press enter to confirm, then pick any base point like this base point, for example. So if I choose this base point and I ask AutoCAD to displace this point 200 millimeter to the left, so you have to move with the box first to the left without clicking anything, then type 200 and press enter or space or right click to confirm your choice of the interval, to confirm the value, which is 200. So you're gonna find or see the box has been shifted 200 millimeter with all of its points to the left. Make sense? How about if you would like to move it up? It's gonna be the same. Just move and pick the object, then press enter, then pick any base point and just show that it's gonna go up Just make sure that it goes up, and activate the ortho mode and type, for example, 300. So it has been shifted 300 up. So you're gonna find that it has been moved 300 up. It is very simple. This is what does it mean move, and this is how we can move objects. Move, it means that you're gonna physically move the object from one location to another location. There is a last thing that I'd like to mention here. If I choose move and I choose the object, select this object, then you're gonna see that he's gonna ask me about the base point. So I choose this base point. Then there is an default value here, use first point as displacement. So as I mentioned, you can just give a displacement and the object is going to move directly, right? So I can use the location of this point with respect to the location of this point. What are the coordinates of this point? The coordinates of this point are 200, 0. 200 in the x and 0 in the y direction. So if I decided to use the option which is between these two special brackets, use first point as displacement, as we mentioned before, that this option, this is a default value. If you would like to use it directly, you can directly press enter without giving any values, without left click, just enter or space. You're gonna confirm that you would proceed with this default value, which is used first as this point as displacement. If you press enter, you're gonna find that the box has been moved 200 millimeters to the right. Why it has been shifted or moved to the right? Because I moved it. I showed that I moved the object itself to the right, and I put a constraint over this one to be moved horizontal. In addition, I pressed enter directly to use the default value or the coordinates. I'm asking, using the first point displacement, it means that I'm asking AutoCAD to do some calculation to calculate the distance according to the coordinates of the first point that you choose as a base point. So again, if I repeat it, for example, move, and I choose the object, this one, then I press enter to confirm my choice. Then AutoCAD gonna ask me to pick a base point. Let us assume that we're gonna pick this base point and press enter. Then, now if you directly press enter, you're gonna find that this box will be shifted in the diagonal direction with a displacement. This displacement can be calculated based on the coordinates of the first point. What is the first point? This is the base point. I chose this point. I selected this point as a base point. This point has coordinates. What are the coordinates of this point? These coordinates are 200 in the x and 100 in the y, right? So AutoCAD, if I choose this option, AutoCAD gonna do some simple calculation that d, which should be the distance, d stands for the distance, it will be the square root of the x0 or the x1 or the x square plus the y square. What are the x and the y? These are the coordinates. X and y, these are the coordinates of the base point that you choose, the base point. So if you choose the option that you ask AutoCAD to use the first point, the distance of the first point, AutoCAD gonna do this simple calculation. Automatically gonna calculate the distance at the square of the x coordinate and the y coordinate of the base point that you choose. Then once AutoCAD gonna calculate this distance, is gonna give a shift to this point in the direction that you specify with this distance. You got my point? So this is another option which basically it is a little bit tough or challenging for many of us to figure it out and use this option for moving the object based on the displacement of the first point. So like for example here, I'm gonna use this as the base point. So this is gonna be the first point that AutoCAD talks about it. And here, if you ask AutoCAD to choose the first point as displacement, so simply I'm gonna press space or enter directly. So you're gonna find that the box has been shifted to the other corner. Like you already moved this corner, initially this corner was here at the 0, point. So it has been shifted up to the other corner. So in this case, you could use the move command for an option in this way, and this is the way that there is d the square root of x squared plus y squared. This is the method that AutoCAD used for doing the calculation of the displacement that this object should be moved with. Make sense? So this is basically for the move command. A very similar command is the copy. To copy an object, how about if you have this square box and you would like to have another copy of this square or rectangular shape multiple times, or even just one time, it's up to you. Simply, if you press on copy, AutoCAD gonna ask you to select an object. So I'm gonna pick this object, then you're gonna press enter just to confirm that I choose this is the object that I would like to copy. Then there are some multiple options here. Forget about these options for now. Now it's gonna ask me about the base point, and this is the default method, and this is the easiest method to move or to have a copy of an object. So let us pick the 0, 0 point, which it should be this point at the base point. Then it's up to you, can copy this box anywhere. Once you just click, because AutoCAD asked me to specify down here, specify second point. Once you left click in anywhere, you're gonna have another copy, but the original copy will be will be the same. You're gonna keep the original copy, but the new copy will show up in the new location that you're gonna press on it. Or the other option, you're just gonna give like coordinates X and Y for the new location or the base point or the new base point of the new copy of the shape. Okay, so for example, I can type like 200, 0 for the new location. So I already got another copy, and you press enter. So this is just one copy. How about if you would like to have multiple copies of this box? You can do basically, you're gonna choose copy command, then you're gonna choose the box, then you have to pick a base point, let's say like the same point 0, 0 point, which is the 0 point. Then you have to make sure that you have like multiple. If you just type here, so it's gonna ask you about, yeah, before that, if you just have copy and choose the object and press enter, and press enter, it's gonna ask you about the base point or multiple. There is multiple option here. If you choose multiple, it means that you ask AutoCAD that, or you confirm with AutoCAD that you would like to have multiple copies. So what does it mean? It means that once you have the first copy, you ask AutoCAD, don't terminate or cancel the command. Keep the command still working, because I would like to have multiple copies of the same object. Then you're gonna pick the base point, let's say like the 0, 0 point. Then you just, once you click here, for example, I'm gonna have one copy in here, and then there is another copy, there is another copy up there, there is one here, and so on. So once you click anywhere, you're gonna have multiple copies, and you can like prepare an array of, it means like set of rows and columns of the same objects repeated in this way. Once you're done, just escape or press enter. You confirm that you already done all these copies, and that's it. Make sense? It is very simple. There is an option in the copy command. If you would like to copy an object in this way and choose this object and press enter, there is an option that it's gonna show up after the base point. Let us choose that the base point still 0, 0 point. There is an option here, array. So what I'm copying here right now with just one copy. How about if you would like to have like 5 or 6 copies at once? With one click, you're gonna end up with 5 or 6 copies. For example, you can choose array, type A, and press enter, or just click on the array word here. So it means that you ask AutoCAD that I would like to proceed with the option of the array. Then AutoCAD is gonna ask you to specify the number of items to the array. How many copies that you would like to have at once. And instead of just one, or you need 5, for example. I need 5, enter. So as you can see, as you move, I'm physically moving 5 copies of the same object. And these 5 copies, as you can see, they're gonna be displaced, the same displacement of the first copy to the original copy. Make sense? For example, if you would like, I'm going to displace the first copy, have another copy next to the first one. So if you just just one click, we end up with 5 at once. And instead of having 5 clicks, right, or 5 copies to do it 5 times, we're gonna end up with 5 copies at once. It is just to save time, save efforts to have these multiple copies. Also, as you can see, once I clicked on this one, it has been terminated. The command has been terminated because I didn't activate that it should be multiple. So how we can have multiple cubes, like 5 rows, 5 columns at once with just 2 clicks. So we're gonna pick copy command, then I'm gonna choose the object and press enter. Then before you specify the base point, you have to make sure that you're gonna work with multiple. There is mode here also. If you press on mode, it's gonna give you, do you need it single or multiple? You're just gonna say that I needed multiple. Okay, so now we're already working as multiple. It means that we're gonna have multiple copies. Then I'm gonna move, choose the base point as 0, 0 point and press enter. Then I'm gonna choose array to specify that I don't need just one, I need more than one as a copy. So let us have like 10 copies. No, my bad, I forgot here. So we have to activate, we have to choose array. Then AutoCAD is gonna ask us to about the number of items to be in the array. So I'm gonna choose like 10 items. So you're gonna have like 10 copies already moving up everywhere. So now let us move. I'm gonna have this 10 in this row. Then since I choose multiple, I'm still working. I'm still have the option, right, to add more. Now I'm gonna choose array again, array, because I would like to have another array in the Y direction of 100, of 10, another 10. So we and press enter, so we end up like 10 boxes already arranged like a single row, and there are another 10 boxes arranged in the vertical direction as shown here. So this is the command copy that would be used. In some cases we may use move, in some other cases we may need to use the command copy. A very similar copy basically is rotate. Like if you do have the rectangular box, this one, and for some reason you would like to give it like a rotation with a certain angle. So you're gonna choose rotate, and it's gonna ask you to select the object again, choose the object and press enter. Then it's gonna ask you again about a base point. The base point is gonna be like the reference point. This is the point that it should be fixed, and all the other points of the box, it should be rotating. Because to give a rotation, any object that is going to be rotated or is going to rotate, it should have a point that it should be fixed. There should be a point of rotation for any object, right? This point of rotation, it would be, which is the base point as named by the AutoCAD. This base point, as I mentioned before, for the copy or the move, it would be a point that belongs to the object, or it would be any other point in anywhere. But in practical way, we have to choose one of the corners or one of the points that belong to the object as a base point to be the point of rotation, and the rest it's going to be rotated with respect to this point. So let us pick again the 0, 0 point, which is the 0 point, this corner, to be the base point. As you can see, as you just move the mouse without clicking anything, that you're going to find that the box is already rotating, right? So if you just click anywhere, you're gonna give a rotation based on this click. AutoCAD automatically gonna calculate the angle theta between this base point that you choose, the first point that you choose, and the second point that you clicked on at. For example, if I clicked at this point, AutoCAD gonna take the XY coordinates and the XY coordinates of the base point, and from the difference between the X coordinates and the difference between the Y coordinates of the 2 points under the square root, or it's gonna substitute the tangent law of angle law, we're gonna end up with the slope of this curve with respect to the x-axis. So it is kind of calculations. I won't gonna explain it to you, but the key idea, this is how it works. Like with AutoCAD gonna pick, if you click a point here, AutoCAD gonna do some calculations to come up with the angle that it should be given to this box to be rotated with this angle. The other option, if you didn't click on the screen now, you just gonna specify the angle. The default angle by default is 0 because we didn't specify any angle before. But for example, I can specify an angle like 45 degree and press enter. So it means that you already giving tilting or rotation to the box with 45 degree in such a way that the angle between the x-axis, this angle between the x-axis and the box itself, it should be the 45 degree that we just specified. So this is simply how we can give rotation to objects. Again, in some cases, we would need to give a rotation to any object that we created before. Make sense? So we discussed move, we discussed copy, we discussed rotate. The next important command is mirror. This is one of the most important commands that would be used. Also, mirror is another function that would be used in terms of modeling. Here we are talking about modeling. And basically, what I'd like to mention very quick about the move, the copy, the rotation, the mirror, this is related to a field of study or a field of science related to modeling, how we can model, or generally how we can do transformation of the coordinates of any object in space. Whatever this space is, two-dimensional space like XY coordinates, or three-dimensional space if we are working in 3D modeling, right? So basically, AutoCAD works with these concepts, with this science. Like AutoCAD, for example, if you're gonna give a command to AutoCAD to move the object with all of its coordinates from one location to another location, so AutoCAD, from the information, because AutoCAD asks us to provide some information about the start base point, the other point. So from this information that you give to AutoCAD, AutoCAD builds or set up a matrix known as a transformation matrix. Then it's gonna do some calculation by multiplying this matrix times the matrix of the coordinates of the original object that you're already moving to end up with the new coordinates at the new location. So these calculations are done in the few seconds, femtoseconds that you just move to another location, you're gonna end up with the object is already moved. AutoCAD there are lots of calculations that like multiplication of matrices, and there are lots of mathematics already found here that to move an object, to copy an object, to rotate an object, or even to do mirror. Mirror, it is another transformation matrix that would be used for giving a mirror of an original image. So AutoCAD works based on science. It is not just like that. There are lots of calculations. So now let us move to mirror. So let us assume that we do have this shape, and for some reason we would like to have a mirror of this shape. So what does it mean, a mirror? A mirror, for example, I'm gonna just show you how it works. If you just press on mirror command, again, it's gonna ask you to pick an object. Here, if you choose this line, this is just one object, this is another object, another object, another object. So as you keep clicking over new objects, you're already adding to the list of these objects. Once you finish your choice or selection of the objects, press enter to confirm, or space, or right click as we mentioned before. Then AutoCAD is gonna ask us to specify first point of the mirror line. What is the mirror line? Imagine that this mirror line is gonna work like the physical mirror. You should have a specific location for the mirror to have a copy of the original object through this mirror. So we have to draw where is the mirror it should be located. Where is the mirror line, which is known as the mirror line in AutoCAD. So for example, if I choose a line, if you just try to draw a line, like I'm gonna click here, and as you can see, this dashed line indicates that this should be the mirror. Imagine that there is a mirror here. So as you can see, I didn't even click. I didn't even give the second click, because AutoCAD asks us here for specified second point of the mirror line. So I didn't specify this point yet, but as you can see that this is like a mirror, and the object on the right, this is the original object, and I'm gonna have another copy of this original object like it is already standing in a mirror. So if you mirror something, this something that it should be, because with respect to the mirror, what is directly facing the mirror, it should be the vertical line. And so in the image, it should be the same, like the vertical line is the thing that faces the mirror. So you're gonna see like the object has been rotated 180 degrees. Like you already flipped the object upside down on the other side, right? So that's why, for example, in the mirror, when you're standing in front of the mirror, you're gonna see your right hand like left hand in the image, and your left hand is gonna be seen like right hand in the image. This difference comes because we're already having a copy, and the new copy or the new image of the original object, it should be rotated with 180 degrees. If we did this rotation, we're gonna end up with this switching in positions between right and left and back and front. So that's why this is gonna be the mirrored copy. It's gonna look like typically the same, but it is mirrored, not a copy. The copy should be identical to the original image, with all the right is still right, the left is still left, the back is still back, the front is still front. But the mirrored, you're gonna have switching between right and left, back and front, as shown here. Even if you give a little bit inclination to the mirror, so you're gonna find that the new image rotates because your mirror line itself, it has been rotated. And this is very clear, very clear. Even if you're already sitting in somewhere and the mirror is not vertical, somehow have some inclination, you're gonna find your image in the mirror as well will be inclined. So that's why as we give rotation, the mirror, the image of the original object rotates as long as the mirror line rotates. So the key idea here is just, so mirror, it works in two steps. Just you're gonna select the object, then you have to draw a line, the mirror line, where it should be. You're gonna pick the mirror line depending on the new image that you would like to have, right? So there are so many things based on which you can choose the mirror line, and the choice of the mirror line is a critical issue. So for example, if I clicked here, so I'm gonna end up with another copy. But we have two options. Do you would like to keep the original copy as it is, or you would like to remove the original copy and have a new mirror copy? Which one that you would like to keep? Definitely the new copy, the mirror copy, I need it, right? Because you already doing a mirror. So it means that physically or intuitively that you need the new copy. But how about the original copy? This original copy on the right, do you need it or you would like to remove it? So that's why here AutoCAD asks us to erase source object. This is the source object. This is the new object. Do you would like to remove or erase the new object? No. If you press no, it means that you ask AutoCAD to keep the original object as it is. But if you would like to erase or remove, you have to choose yes. Or you can just use no or yes here, right? So I'm just gonna press no. I'm gonna keep the original object. So we're gonna have a copy of the original object, and we're gonna have the original object still in the same location. This is the meaning of a mirror. We can even have a mirror, and this mirror is gonna be used a lot. And as you practice more, you're gonna figure out what does it mean mirror. For example, I can do mirror again, and I'm gonna select all of these objects because AutoCAD down there asked me to select objects. I'm gonna select the object, then I'm gonna press enter. Then it's gonna ask me about the mirror line. Now I'm gonna draw a line. Let us assume that this vertical line is the mirror line. So as you can see, I'm gonna have like another copy identical, but there is kind of symmetry. So this mirror line here is gonna work like a symmetrical line. And in terms of engineering, we are using these symmetrical lines in so many applications. Like how about if we have an object with this kind of symmetry? So instead of drawing all the objects, instead of drawing this object like two half circles, then you're gonna draw all of this line, you can just draw half of the object. Then using mirror, you're gonna end up with the second half because of the symmetry that we have. So then you can press no just to keep the original object. Then if you would like to remove this line in the middle, you can get rid of it. So if this is the original drawing, for example, that I'd like to create using AutoCAD or generate using AutoCAD, what I'm gonna do basically, one of the objects, you can work on this drawing as it already given. You're gonna draw a horizontal line, then you're gonna locate the center of these two circles, draw this two lines, then use trim to cut the circles. It means that it's gonna take time. The other option, you just gonna draw half of the shape, then you're gonna use mirror to copy this one, to have another copy, mirror copy, about this vertical line as I did here, and keep the origin. Then you can remove the line in the middle. Okay, so this is another option, and in many cases we would need to use the mirror command. Make sense? Now let us move to another command, which is trim and extend. These two commands are very important, and you're gonna use them a lot. These are the more, especially trim. You're gonna use trim all the time. So we discussed here the command that would be used for creating objects like lines, circles, and so on. And we said that there are some commands that would be used for modifying any object or any drawing that you created or generated over the screen, right? Like, let us assume that we do have this drawing, whatever it is, and let us assume that we would like to do trimming. Trim, it means that we would like to cut some portions of the lines and the circle that we created here. So to do so, basically, the most effective tool is trim, and it is very simple tool, by the way. Also, there is extend that would be used in some cases, but it is not commonly used. But the most common one is the trim for sure. Move, copy, rotate, these are not commonly used. We basically we're gonna use them. Mirror, it would be used in some cases, but trim, it's gonna be used a lot. Once you press on this one, you can just record the command by typing trim and press enter, or you just pick or click on the icon itself. The first step here, AutoCAD gonna ask us to select object or select all. The option here is to select all. So I'm gonna let you know how the trim command works. Basically, it works that you have to pick a cutter for any object that you're gonna choose next. Like the cutter, it should be chosen first, then you're gonna choose the object that is going to be cut by this cutter. Like for example, if I choose this object to be a cutter, like I select this line as a cutter and I pressed enter, just only this line. So now this line is gonna work like a cutter, like a knife. So this line, assume that this is a knife. This line already cuts this line and this line into two pieces, two parts, right? So if you would like to cut, assume that this is knife that cuts these two long lines. So this line is gonna be split into two parts because of this cutter. You can get rid of this part, just click on it, or you can, now I won't gonna able to remove the other part because the other part, it is not cut anymore. It is just a single object, and trim cannot remove, by default, cannot remove a single object. There is an option here, which is erase, that we can use for getting or removing a complete object that is not already cut, right? But forget about this now, this point for now. How about this line, this horizontal line that you choose first as a cutter? Now it cuts this line into two pieces, two parts. You can get rid of this part or you can get rid of the other part. But here, this part and this part, I cannot remove them. Why? Because these are not cut anymore. These are single objects. So how we can remove them? You can use erase, just type R or just press on this one, and you can choose this line that you would like to remove and press enter, is gonna be removed. And the trim command will be still working. How about if you would like to remove this line? You're gonna choose erase again and choose this line and press enter to confirm that you would like to remove this line, and so on. So this is simply, and once you're done finish the trim or the trimming action that you would like to do, just escape, you're gonna cancel the command. So this is simply how it works, that you have to choose a cutter, and this cutter should cut the object that you plan to cut or trim something of this object or this line, right? But to work in this way, like which is gonna be the cutter, which it should be cutted, it would be crazy a little bit. It would be hard or challenging for some of us. So the easiest way to use trim basically is to select all the objects to be cutter to each other. You're gonna select all the shape, all the lines, all the objects. Everyone is gonna work like a knife to the other one. And then you can directly pick the parts that you would like to get rid of or remove or trim. Very simple. And this is the simplest way, and this is the most practical way. When basically we work and do and generate drawings, we don't hesitate to, you know, like which one, or argue which one it should be knife, which one it should be cutter or cut it. No, forget about these things. Just directly go ahead and select all the lines, all the objects to be cutters to each other. So, and this is the practical thing. So if you choose trim, Simply, it's gonna ask you to select objects or select all. Select all, this is the default value. How we can proceed with the default value, you can directly press space or enter or right click to confirm that you would like to move or proceed with the default value. So let us press enter, for example. Then it means that right now I've chosen all the lines as cutters. So once you just go over any line, it can be removed. Very simple. So this is the easiest way, this is the simplest way and the most efficient way to get rid of the, like to use trim command using in AutoCAD. So for example, I can remove this line, I can remove this line. What I'd like to mention here, that this line, it should be completely removed, but this is depends basically on the processor and the processing capacity of the computer that you're already using and the graphic card itself. But anyway, so that's why I do have like some portions already removed and the other portion is not removed. But it should be, I mean that all of this portion, it should be removed at once. And the same thing, I can get rid of this one, I can get rid of these parts and so on. So this is basically how trim works. Very simple. Select all lines or objects as cutters to each other and trim the part that you would like to remove easily. Make sense? Then also there is an option in the trim. If you just choose select all as a trim, there is here fence. Fence, for example, if you choose fence, as you move, looks like you already drawn lines. As you move and draw lines, and anything that cuts the line, it will be automatically trimmed. Why this part is not trimmed? Because this line, it has been, after trimming this portion, it has been a separate object, a single object that it cannot be removed by trim, should be erased. So that's why this one won't gonna be removed, but these lines will be removed by trimming and so on. So as you move with the line, and once you're done, just press enter to confirm that these are the set of lines, and any portion of the objects that you already drew before that were intersecting with these dashed lines, they will be trimmed automatically. Okay. So, and there are some other options, but the easiest way, as I mentioned, for trim, just trim, select all, press enter, and pick the parts that you would like to remove. Very simple command. There is another command which works against trim, is extend. Trim is just to cut portion of a line or a circle, right? But how about if you have an object that is like this line? I draw this line, I figured out that this line is kind of short. And it should be, I have to increase the length of this line to be at this point. I can do it typically what I've did here. Just you can move this point, just wait a little bit to be orange color, then press on it, it will be red, then you can extend it. I'm extending the line next to this horizontal line. So I can do it directly using the command extend. If you just choose extend, again, it's gonna ask you to select the object. Here you're gonna pick the object that it should work like edges, not cutters. Here you are not cutting, you're already extending till another edge. So next to the next edge. So these lines or this object should work edges to each other. So the easiest way, you're gonna select all as edges to each other. So press directly enter, and then you're just gonna extend any line to the next edge. Like for example, if you just highlight, come closer to the end, to this end point, you're gonna find that this line has been extended till the edge of this point, of this line. So I can extend this one, I can extend this one, so they're gonna meet together at this corner. You got it? For example, how about if you would like to extend this line further to the next edge, which should be the circle, you can extend next to the circle, up to the circle. I can extend this one till the next edge. I can extend this one till the next edge, which is this line. I extend this one, but if you try to extend this one, it will be extended to infinity. Why? There is no further edges up there. So it will be extended to till infinity, but basically we don't have a practical use for an infinity line in many cases. Anyway, also I can extend this one till the next edge and so on. I can extend this one till the next edge. The next edge, it will be the extension of this line. So for example, if I extended this one, it will be just extended up till the extension of this line, so they're gonna meet them each other at this corner, at this point. So this is how trim and extend commands are working, and they are very useful commands, especially the trim command. Make sense? Now the next command that we're gonna consider is the array, and we're gonna start with the rectangular array. So what is array? Array, as we discussed even with the copy, like you're gonna have multiple copies of the original object, and you can arrange these copies into rows and columns. If you're already working as a rectangular array or over polar array, it means that you're just gonna arrange these different copies over a circular path, right? Or even using this path array, it means that you can set up another path over which you are going to arrange these multiple copies over this path. But this is not practical. Basically, we barely gonna use this option. So that's why if we're gonna talk about most of the software like AutoCAD, SolidWorks, Primavera, all the software that used for engineering drawing, basically, the main two arrays or patterns that would be used are the rectangular array and the polar array. But the path array, this has been added in the recent versions of AutoCAD, so it is not commonly used basically. Okay, so I'm gonna start with the rectangular array. So rectangular array, it means that we would like to have multiple copies of this object, and these copies will be arranged over rows and columns like in a rectangular pattern. And if you choose the command rectangular array, the first step is gonna ask AutoCAD gonna ask us to pick the object or select the objects to be arrayed. So we're gonna choose this object. We don't have only this hexagonal shape, and then you have to confirm that you choose the object. Then you're gonna press enter. Then by default, AutoCAD gonna give some numbers of columns and some numbers of rows. Like if you're gonna look at it here, we're gonna have 4 columns. So the vertical thing, this refers to the column, and the horizontal refers to the number of lines. So we have here 3 rows, number of rows. So we have 3 rows, row 1, 2, 3, and we do have 4 columns arranged in this way of the same pattern. So if you would like to increase the number of rows, for example, to 5 rows, you can do it. You're gonna have like 5 rows, and the number of columns, let's say to 10 rows, so we get 10 columns. So we're gonna end up with 10 columns times 5 columns. So this is a good thing of the array. Instead of just wasting time to have copies of all of these different copies, you're just gonna do array. It's gonna be done very quick. You're gonna arrange these multiple copies over rows and columns very easy using the rectangular pattern or the rectangular array in AutoCAD. But the key idea here is 2 things basically. The first thing, that we would like to control somehow the distance. What about the distance between this copy and this copy? And it means that what about the distance between the different rows? Each 2 rows, and what is the distance between every 2 columns? So to control the distance, basically, this is an option here that is between. Between indicate that this is the in-between distance between each 2 column or every 2 rows. It depends. So for example, we can control the distance here. By default is AutoCAD gives any initial value. But basically, if we would like to have the distance between the multiple rows, like the distance between this row and the next one and so on, to be like 150. So you're gonna find that the shape has been shifted up a little bit. Also, how about the column? We would like to have the distance between the column like 200 each. So you're gonna have it has been expanded in the X direction. So you can control in general the distance between 2 rows and 2 columns using the between distance. Even there is another option that you can control the total distance. How about, for example, for some reason, this basically why AutoCAD gives us all of these options, because this depends on the given information or the given data of the drawing that you already created. For example, in some cases, you may have the drawing that you have information about the overall expanded distance over the X direction and the overall expanded distance over the Y direction. But we don't have the value of the in-between distance. We can calculate it, but to to save time and don't waste time of doing calculations, you can do it directly. For example, how about if the columns already distributed over 2000, not just 1800 distance. So it's gonna be extended in such a way that the total distance, the entire distance along x-axis should be 2000, and the in-between distance will be changed and calculated automatically. The same thing, how about if we would like to distribute the rows, the 5 rows over 1000 distance, so it will be distributed and we're gonna end up with in-between distance as 250 each between every 2 rows, and as shown here. So it means that AutoCAD gonna do the calculations very quick. What about levels? Level, basically this we're gonna need it in case that we are already working in 3 dimension to have like in the Z direction. This is like the X direction, this is the Y direction, and there is another direction which is the Z direction, and we're gonna need it in case that we're already working in 3 dimension. But here with the focus is just on 2-dimensional sketching. Make sense? So this is another option or a method that we can control either the in-between distance or the overall distance, and it depends on the number of rows and number of columns. AutoCAD gonna do the calculations automatically. But how about if in some cases you may have no information about the distance, the overall distance, even the in-between distance, we don't know them. So how we can figure it out? For example, how about if we would like to have this array in such a way that this object is already like this point in the object is already conceded over this point on the next object, and so on, like all the cubes already touching each other, like overlapping or touching the cubes already, each topic, every cubby touch the previous and the next one. Okay, so how we can set up this thing? We can do it basically using the base point option. What is the base point here? The base point by default is gonna be the center of the shape. AutoCAD is gonna pick any point to be a base point, which is in most of the cases if the shape is symmetrical like this hexagonal shape, is gonna be the center point. So currently the base point is this point. And as you can see, there is an arrow here and there is another one. So for example, if you just move the mouse over this arrow without clicking anything, and click on it then just wait to be orange colored, then click on it, left click, in this case just wait to be orange, then click on it, you already moving the objects, right? So I'm decreasing the distance between the different columns or increasing the distance, it's up to you. Make sense? So for example, how about if I need this point to be considered to this point? Like there is no in-between distance between the different columns. So if I try to do it basically, the first look, I'm gonna say, okay, the in-between distance between the columns should be 0, right? If you try to type 0 here, it won't gonna work because there should be a distance between the between the columns because the base point is this one. So it means that to have, so the other option that you should know the distance between this center point and this edge point. But again, we don't have this distance. I have no clue. As of myself, I drew this shape, I have no clue what is this distance. So how we can handle this problem basically, one of the option is just to move the base point. So what I'm gonna do here, I'm just gonna move the base point. I'm gonna just click on base point. Then AutoCAD gonna ask us to specify where it should be the base point. I'm going to move the base point back here. So as you can see that you're gonna find that this row has been moved back a little bit. It was in the center, it has been moved. Now I'm gonna click on this point and I'm gonna click on this point and I'm going to merge it with this corner, as you can see. So what I've did here, I've merged all the columns in such a way that the in-between distance between each two will be 0. How about if I'd like to do it the same for the rows? How about if I would like to have this line of this object is conceded over this line? So if I try to move here, this one, in this way, it will move down, but I have no control where I should stop to have these two lines conceded together, right? So how we can do it, you have to move again, you have to shift again the base point. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna move the base point. The base point was here, right? This is the base point, the square box that refers to the base point. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna move the base point here to this point. So as you can see, you're gonna find that this arrow has been shifted. So I'm gonna click on it and then move it down here. So now I'm pretty sure that these two lines already considered, these 2 points are already considered. So I end up with an arrayed pattern or an array with multiple copies of this object which already touching each other. So there is no spaces in between in either the column or the X direction or the Y direction. Make sense? So this is another option, and once you set up your pattern and array the way that you want and make sure of the distances, so the first option, the first thing, you should specify the number of columns and number of rows. You can specify the in-between distance, or you can give information about the total distance. Automatically AutoCAD gonna do the calculations. If you have no clue about the distances or the overall distance in the X and Y direction, you can use the base point. You can play with it, just move it to other points. You can move the arrows to stick the points together as I just did in this example. Once you're done and satisfied with the array, you have to confirm that you already done of the array. You can exit, close the array just to confirm that you have done, or you can press enter directly to confirm that we finished the array. So you're gonna end up with the array in this way. Make sense? This is simply how, okay, so how about if you figure out that there's something wrong in this array? If you just choose the shape again, you can even play with this distance and try to change again. You can do any changes later. It's gonna do the change into the original array that you set up before. Make sense? So this is simply how the rectangular array works. Now let us move to the polar array. Polar array is another option. Instead of having a copy of the same object over and arrange these copies on the X and Y directions in the rectangular pattern, you're gonna arrange them over a circular pattern, which is circular or polar pattern. So if you just choose the option as polar array, the first step is gonna ask AutoCAD gonna ask us to select the object. So I'm gonna pick the object. For example, let us assume that I'd like to have multiple copies of these 2 circles, these 2 small circles, and give them arrangement over a circular path, and the center of this circular path, it should be the center of the big circle. Like assume that we would like to distribute this multiple copies of this circle over the circumference of the big circle. So how we can do it? We have to use polar array, or one of the options. The easiest method basically is polar array. So it's gonna ask us to select the object. I'm gonna pick this object, and let us just work on in the first circle. Forget about the second one. You can choose the second one and work the same if they do have the same pattern or the same array. But for now, let us just make the first one and press enter to confirm that you choose the object. Then it's gonna ask us for some information about the polar. The first information, which is essential basically, is the center of the circular path, because you are going to distribute it over a circle. And a circle, the first information that we should have for the circle is just the center point. So I'm gonna pick the center of this circle to be the center point. And to pick the center point of a circle, as we mentioned multiple times before, you should make sure of the snap, which is the object snapping of the circle, to be activated. And activated, it means that the center should be shown. If it is not shown, you just move with the mouse, cut the circumference, cut the circle, it will be shown here once you come closer to the center. Then click on it. If you clicked on the center, you're gonna have multiple copies. By default, AutoCAD gives the initial value of the different items. The number of items right now, 6, including the original item, including the original circle. I'm already having a copy. It means that you're gonna have extra 5 copies over the original one. So if you count here, starting from this one, you're gonna have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So in total, we're gonna end up with 6 items. No, how about if we needed like 8 items or 9 items? It's gonna be distributed, and the in-between distance or the in-between angle, to be more accurate, is gonna be automatically calculated. Like if you divide the 360 degrees, because we're already circulating in a complete circle, over 8, this is going to give us 45 degree in between. You can even give the in-between distance for the 8 items. For example, how about if I need them to be distributed, 8 items to be distributed over in such a way that the angle between them is just 30 degrees. So it will be, you're going to have the copy at 30 degree in this way, right? And it will not, 8 items times 30 degrees, this one gonna cover a complete circle. So you're gonna have a portion of the circle already distributed over a portion of the circle. It won't gonna cover the whole circle. But if you already have the whole circle, the in-between distance will be, or angle will be automatically calculated. Make sense? Here you can give multiple levels in case that we're already working in the third direction. Even you can have like multiple rows. So it means that you're gonna have like one circular row, then there is another circular row, then there is a third circular row, and so on. But the key idea that all of these rows should have the same pattern, the same array of over the polar direction. Or you can have just only one row, and even you can give the in-between distance or the total distance. Like let us assume that we have a total distance between all the 3 rows. So we're gonna have like one circular row of circles, and there is another circular row, and there is a third circular row, and the distance between them is going to be 50 millimeter as given here. And so, because we already specified that the total distance it should be between the 3 rows to be 100 millimeters. But in many of the cases, we may use only just one row, so you're going to end up with the pattern. Once we've done and confirm and you agree with everything, you can just directly press enter. How about if you would like for some reason to change the base point? So we have here a base point which should be the center of this circle. How about you can even play with the base point the same way that we did with the rectangular pattern to move. For example, I can move this circle, so I can control the arrangement or the direction even. I can have the arrangement of the circles over this side, or it could be over the other side. It's up to you. Like I can arrange over less than 360 degrees, but over the other side, okay? Like the angle between them is gonna be 19 degrees, and they're gonna fill over the 145 degrees, okay? So this is simply how we can do the balance. So let us assume that we do have 360 distributed over as 8 items in this way. And once you confirm, you just press enter. So we're gonna end up with the polar pattern. Let us do it again and repeat it for the small circle. You're gonna pick the circle and press enter. Then it's gonna ask us about the center point of the array. I'm gonna pick the center of the big circle to be the center point. Then let us proceed with 8 items as well, which is gonna be distributed over the 360 degrees of small circles. Then once you've done, just press enter, okay? So simply this is how the polar array works. All right, so the next command that we're gonna consider is the offset command. You're gonna find it here, this a little bit small icon. So what is the offset basically? Offset, it is kind of giving a copy of the original object that you created, but this copy is gonna be offset a little bit. Offset is gonna be like expanded outside, another copy that is a little bit bigger or smaller of the original object. Like you're already displacing the object, but with an offset distance between the original copy and the new copy, okay? So it is a concept, another concept of the transformation of the coordinates of the points of the original object. Forget about the details of this transformation, but simply I'm gonna show you how offset it works. So if you just press on the icon, the first step is gonna ask us to specify the distance, and there are some other options. Basically, normally what we are doing, we specify the offset distance, the distance that should be between the original object and the new copy object. And let us assume that we do have an offset distance of 10 millimeters. Then your objective is just to pick the object that it should be offset. So like for example, I'm gonna pick this line, so it would be offset to the right or to the left. So you're gonna have like another copy of the original line, and it's up to you. You can just set this copy to the right or the left. Just left click on the right to the original object, or on the left of the original object, you're gonna have the new copy. So I'm gonna end up with an offset copy of the original line to the right. It is like typical for the line. Basically, it's gonna be like you're already doing a copy of the line itself. But there is, by default, it works like multiple. As I'm gonna let you know what does it mean multiple. But anyway, for example, how about this circle, this curve at the corner? I didn't explain to you how we can create this curve. Now I'm gonna skip this one through this video, but it will be considered later when we discuss the tangencies. But anyway, let us assume that we do have this curve that we created before somehow, and we would like to have an offset of this one. To have an offset of a curve, the curve it should be with a bigger radius, in case that it should be outside the curve, the original curve. So it means that if the radius of the original curve is 20, and you're already adding a distance, offset distance of 10, so the radius of the new curve it should be 30 millimeter. It will be automatically scaled up according to the new offset distance that you provide. So if you click outside, you're gonna end up with a bigger curve. The radius of the outside or the new or the copy, the copy version of the original curve, it should be bigger because it is located outside the shape. But if you have another offset, I may have another offset inside, so the radius should be lower, less, with 10 millimeter less. So the original radius was 20 millimeter, now it became 10 millimeter. The same thing, I can have another copy outside of the line, another copy outside, and so on. So this is the meaning of offset. Like we're gonna say that we're already building a new offset copy of the original shape. And once you're done, just press enter to confirm or escape to cancel the command. So we already end up with this was the original shape. This thing inside, the internal square, this was the original shape, and the new shape which is already offset, identical but bigger in size, like you're already scaling something up in all the directions. So this is the meaning of offset. I can even have the offset inside the shape. So once you pick up offset, it's gonna ask you about the distance. You're gonna specify the distance, let's say like 10 millimeter. Then you're gonna pick the line and click inside the shape to have another offset in the other side. Make sense? So very simple. This is how the offset command works. Last thing that I'd like to mention about offset command, how about, for example, if I choose offset and he asks us about the distance. So I'm gonna give the distance like 10 millimeter again. And if you try to choose this line, we're gonna get a copy of this line on the right side. Then if you need another copy inside, how about if you would like to have outside and external and internal offsets? So it means that you have to click over the line twice or the object twice. Like you're gonna choose the object once and click outside, then another time to click inside. So it's gonna take time. Can I do it quickly? I mean, end up with both at once. It is not that much over using AutoCAD. There is no specific option to have the offset external and internal at once. But there is an option that we can do it using multiple options. For example, I'm gonna pick the line. Once you choose the line, before you pick one of the sides, there is an option here, multiple. If you just type M and press enter or click on multiple, you are giving an order to AutoCAD to give you ability to click outside and inside in the meanwhile without choosing the line. You can even have multiple copies inside and outside. This is the meaning of multiple. And the distance between every copy will be, each copy will be the 10 millimeter offset distance that you specified before. Once I have multiple copies of this line, you're gonna press enter that you confirm that I'm done of these multiple copies of this line to move to another object. Like I can have multiple copies of the circle, the curve. You can have multiple offsets, then press enter. Then you're gonna move to the next line and have multiple copies as well and click. As you click further, you're gonna end up with new copy and so on and press enter. Then multiple copies of this one. So you're gonna have like multiple offsets. And as you keep going, you're gonna end up with multiple offsets of the same object. This is an option that you have through the AutoCAD for the offset command. Make sense? Now let us consider this example here as a practice on the different commands that we covered in the draw panel and the modify panel to create or generate a drawing typically the same like this one, but keep in mind that we won't gonna add the dimensions to the drawing. We didn't discuss adding the dimensions to a drawing using AutoCAD yet, but the main objective is just to stick to the dimension, use them to create or generate this drawing using AutoCAD. How it works on AutoCAD? It works on AutoCAD typically the same. Like if I ask you to draw this shape by hand, what you should do, you're gonna do it using AutoCAD. Typically the same procedure, stick to the procedure the same. So for example, if I decided to create this drawing by hand, just draw it by hand. So as we practiced before even, it is better to pick like a start point. I'm gonna pick a point to be a start point. And let us choose this point, this corner to be the start point, this one. Make sense? Then what you're gonna do, so I'm gonna start, assume that this is the drawing sheet. So I'm gonna start from this point. Then I'm going to draw like a horizontal line, very long line. And the length of this line, it should be 130 millimeter. So to draw it by hand, you're gonna draw a horizontal line, very light line. Then you're gonna measure 131 millimeter over this line. Mark the end point, then you're gonna go over it again with the 0.5 millimeter pencil to mark that there is a horizontal line already drawn here. Then from this horizontal line, you're gonna go up with another vertical line, this vertical line with a length of 53 millimeter. Then you're gonna go to the left with the 131 millimeter. Then you're gonna drop down with the 53 millimeter to draw like a rectangular shape, right? Closed rectangular shape, very simple. And this is the first part. You're just gonna break down the given shape into some simple steps like lines, circles, curves, and so on. Typically, any drawing, any two-dimensional sketch, as we mentioned multiple times before, it is a set of lines, set of curves, set of circles, right? So this is, let us create this just rectangular, very simple rectangular shape over AutoCAD. So to draw it, basically you can use the rectangular command, or you can just use 4 lines. Draw 4 lines, typically what we did by hand. So I'm gonna start from the 0, point. It is advised to start from a point that you already knew what is this point, like the 0, point, which is the origin point. So then I'm gonna draw, make sure that the ortho mode is activated. Now the line can rotate. I'm gonna activate the ortho mode, and I'm going to draw a horizontal line going to the right. The length of this line, it should be 131 millimeter. Then press enter. Then I'm gonna go up with 53 millimeter. Then I'm gonna go to the left with 131 millimeter, and then I'm gonna drop down to with 53 millimeter, or simply as we mentioned before, you can just type C on the keyboard and press enter to close the shape. C stands for close the shape. So we already end up with a rectangular shape. This is the base of the shape. So what next? The next part, like we're gonna move right now into drawing this small 3 lines. Like we're gonna have 1 line here, then there is another line. Line, it should be like a complete line. Assume that this line in the beginning like a complete line. It is not trimmed one, it is a complete line. Then there is a horizontal line. Forget about the feature inside. Very simple, 3 simple lines. But to draw this line, basically it requires a start point. So a start point of these 3 lines, basically it would be either this point or any other point here. But the location of these 2 points, it requires so many calculations. But how about these 2 points? We can look at them. So one of the options, basically, that I already have this corner, this point, I already have this point here. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna jump up, I'm gonna draw a vertical line. And the distance of this vertical line, it should be calculated in this case. So it's gonna be the difference. So you're gonna subtract 53 negative 27 over 2. This is gonna give us this distance. So this distance will be the 53 negative 27 over 2, right? But how about if I don't want to do any calculations? So simply, there is another option that from the midpoint of this vertical line, I already have this line in the drawing down here, right? So the midpoint of this line, I can locate it. There is an option using the OSNAP on AutoCAD to locate the midpoint of a line. So from the midpoint and the midpoint of the line, it should be shown like square, green rectangular shape. So from this midpoint, you can draw a vertical line with 27/2, and there is another vertical line down with 27/2. You're gonna end up with these 2 points. Then you can draw horizontal line, another vertical line, horizontal line, to end up with the shape. Make sense? What is the length of this horizontal line? It is not given in the drawing. It is one of the missing dimensions of the drawing. So this indicates that dimensions are a big deal, right? Because I have no clue what should be the length of this shape. So if we're going to talk about in terms of engineering for mechanical engineering, for example, for manufacturing, if you missed any dimension, this dimension that you missed, it is a big deal. The other engineer, remember in the first lecture, we mentioned that engineering drawing, you are not drawing for yourself, you're drawing for somebody else who's going to read your drawing. So you have to stick to the standard. Your drawing should be neat and clear, and it should be fully defined. Fully defined, what does it mean? It means that all the dimensions required to regenerating and redrawing this drawing again, it should be there. So here we don't have a missing dimension, so typically I won't gonna able to proceed unless I'm gonna give a call to the guy who drew this thing and I'm gonna ask him about this dimension. Make sense? So missing dimensions is a big deal in terms of engineering drawing. So this is one of the missing dimensions here in this drawing. So let us assume that this dimension, for sure, in terms of practically, you cannot assume any dimensions. You have to confirm that this dimension is this with this value. But since I'm giving this practice, let us assume that this missing dimension is already given with like let's say like 42 millimeters. Make sense? So what I'm gonna do, basically going back here, so to draw this shape, I'm gonna pick a line. I'm gonna draw from the midpoint here. I'm gonna draw a line, vertical line, and the length of this vertical line is gonna be the 27/2. 27/2 is gonna give us 13.5. Then I'm gonna drop down here with 13.5. You're gonna end up with these 2 points. But you have to remember that we already draw 2 lines here, right? These 2 lines that you draw, we have to remove them. As we mentioned before, I draw these 2 lines just to assist me to locate a point, right? But these 2 lines, they are not physically exist in the drawing. There was an original line, which is the big long vertical line, was already there. So if you just keep these other 2 lines that you just draw them to locate these 2 points, this is gonna give problem and error when we try to convert the shape into 3-dimensional modeling in the next steps, right? So from the beginning, if you draw any line to assist you to locate a point, make sure that you remove this line. Once you just located the point and there is no need for these lines anymore, just remove them directly, right? Once you remove these 2 lines, you can draw a horizontal line with 52 millimeter. Then you're gonna draw a drop down with 27 millimeter. Then there is another line with the 42 millimeter. You're gonna end up with these 3 lines. So, and this is typically what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna pick line. Then from the midpoint, make sure that the OSNAP is activated. I'm gonna click on it. Then I'm gonna go up with 27/2, which is 13.5, and press enter. Then I'm gonna draw a horizontal line 42 and press enter. Then I'm gonna drop down with 27 and press enter. Then to the left 42 and press enter, and then escape. So we already got this line. This is the second line. There is the third line, but there is a little bit small line that it shouldn't be here, right? It should be removed. So you're gonna use the right or the blue box to select. As we mentioned before, the blue box can select any object that is fully located inside the box, but it won't gonna select any object that intersect with the edges of this blue box, right? So I'm gonna select this line using the blue box, then delete the line or just erase the line. Just if you press delete, it will be deleted. So I end up with this shape. Then what next? I won't gonna able to create these three lines unless you draw the circle first, right? And but there is a line that we can draw, this line in the middle here. I can draw this line. This line is already located over the 58 millimeter from the left, right? So I already have this point. If you draw a horizontal line, if I draw a horizontal line here, if I draw a horizontal line in this way, and the length of this line is 58, then I'm going to draw a vertical line. The length of this vertical line will be the 53, as which is the vertical line here, right? Then you have to remove this line again that assists us to locate this point. So this is what I'm gonna typically do. From this start point, I'm gonna draw a horizontal line with 58 millimeter, then press enter. Then I'm gonna jump up with 53 millimeter and press enter. So I already got this line. Then I can remove this line also again using the blue box and delete. Make sense? Now we have to draw the circle. So we have two circles basically. One circle is already somehow cut. It is cut circle at some portion is already removed. But anyway, I can assume that this is like a complete circle in the beginning, right? So then I'm gonna use trim to trim the extra portions. So I'm gonna draw this circle. The radius of this circle is already given by 20.5 millimeter. So, but to draw a circle, as we mentioned before, we have to locate the center point first. So I have to draw some set of lines first to locate the center point of the circle. So I already have this corner, for example, right? I can draw a line to the left, and the length of this line is gonna be 39. Agree? Then from this point, which it should be the end point of this line, I'm gonna jump up with 53/2. This is gonna give me the center point. This is one option. Then I'm going to remove these two lines. There is another way that you just can draw only one line and you directly gonna end up with the center, because from this drawing there is kind of symmetry. So what does it mean? It means that this center point, it should be in the middle of the 53 millimeter width, right? So what does it mean? I can locate the midpoint using AutoCAD of this line, right? From this midpoint, if you draw a line to the left with 39 millimeter, you at the end of this line, you're gonna end up with the center point of the circle. Then you can draw the circle. Then after that, you can remove the line. Make sense? And this typically what I'm gonna do. What we're gonna do from the midpoint, I'm gonna draw a horizontal line. The end of this line is gonna give us the center point. Then I'm gonna draw the first circle, right? The big circle with a radius of 20.5 millimeter. So I'm gonna big line. Then from this midpoint, I'm gonna draw a line to the left. The length of this line will be 39 millimeter. Then just skip. The end of this line, this point, it should be the center point of the circle. So what I'm gonna big circle from the end point, make sure that the ortho mode is activated. From the end point, click on it. This is gonna give us the center of this circle. The radius of the circle is 20.5 millimeter. Read down here, AutoCAD asks us about the radius. Make sure that he asks about the radius. So the radius is 20.5 and press enter. So we already got the first circle. Now I can remove this line because it is not in the drawing. Then how about the small circle? We can create it. We can draw this one very quick. It has the same, it is coincident, it has the same, sharing the same center with the big circle, but with a different radius or a different diameter. The diameter, it is phi. We said that the phi stands for the diameter. The diameter here, it is 21 millimeter. So I'm gonna make a circle, and the circle should have the same center point as the big circle, right? So you can click on the circle command, or you just type C and press enter. If you try to locate the center point of the circle, I don't see it, right? I already activating the OSNAP, but the center is not showing. If this happens, basically, you have to go across the circle first with the mouse without clicking it, just go across the circle. Then you're gonna find the center point which will be located, right? Then click on it. We already got the center point. Then you can draw the circle. The diameter of the circle is 21. Here AutoCAD asks about the radius. You can do the calculations. just 21 over 2, which is going to give us 10.5, or you can simply switch to the diameter D and press enter, then type 21, which it should be the diameter of the circle. So now we draw these two circles. Now we would like to draw this rectangular shape, right? But the problem is that I won't gonna able to locate the end of this horizontal line because it should be located at 41 from this line, right? So what does it mean? It means that I have no clue till the moment I won't gonna able to draw this line, except you have to draw this line first, vertical line. This vertical line should be drawn first. Where is this vertical line? It is located at 15 millimeter on the left from the center point, or this center line, vertical center line of the circle. Make sense? So what does it mean? For example, if I decided to draw this line, what I'm gonna do, first of all, I'm gonna draw from this point, from this center point here. I'm gonna draw a line with a length 15 millimeter. The end of this line is gonna give me the midpoint of this line, but we still have no clue what should be the length of this line. The length of this line it will be automatically generated up on the intersection of this line with the circumference of the circle, of the big circle. So what I'm gonna do basically, I'm gonna draw first a line from the center point with a length 15 millimeter. The end point of this line is gonna give me the midpoint of this vertical line. Then from this midpoint, I'm gonna draw any line with any length. Any line with any length going down. Any two lines, one vertical up, one vertical down with any length. Make sure that these two lines already go outside the circle, and this one go outside the circle from the other side. Then I can use trim to cut these extra portions. Make sense? And this is basically what I'm gonna do. So what we will do here, I'm gonna pick a line from the center point as we agreed, and then I'm gonna draw a line with a length 15 millimeter. Just move to the left with 15 millimeter. So the end point of this line, gives us the midpoint of the vertical line that should be drawn here. But I'm gonna zoom in a little bit and just click anywhere outside the circle, just to make sure that you have this vertical line is already going outside the circle. Then I'm gonna trim the extra portion because I don't know what is the exact length of this line, right? And this basically what you're gonna do when you draw. What we're gonna do, if I decided to draw it by hand, from this point, I'm gonna draw a horizontal line with 15 millimeter. Then I'm gonna just draw any vertical line. Then I'm gonna erase the extra portions here, right? These portions will be removed. I'm gonna do the same here. So typically the same. I'm gonna draw another line going down. Make sure that it already exceeds the limits of the circle. Then this line, I don't need it anymore. It is not in the drawing. Then you can use the trim command. Trim command, it is very simple, as we did million times before. The easiest option that once you pick the command, the command or the icon itself, press enter directly to activate that all the edges, all the lines are cutters to each other. Then you just gonna remove this extra portion. Don't forget to press enter after the icon, after you activate the trim command. Okay. Then you're gonna press enter, so we end up with this vertical line. Make sense? Now we can move right now to this line, these three lines here, right? So I already have this midpoint. I already have this point here. So from this point, if we try from this point here, I can draw a line with a length 41 millimeter horizontal line. Agree? The same length, right? You're gonna end up with the midpoint of this vertical line. This vertical line is 12 millimeter. So if you just draw up a vertical line 6 millimeter, then you're gonna go to the left, the right with any length. Make sure that you cut the circle because we don't know what is the exact length of this horizontal line. So we're gonna draw just any horizontal line, then we're gonna trim the extra portion using the trim command. We're gonna do the same. I'm gonna drop down here with 6 mm, then I'm gonna go to the right with any lengths to cut the circle, then I'm gonna use the trim command. Make sense? And this is typically what we gonna do. So I'm gonna draw a line from the midpoint here. This line, it should be with 41 mm to the right. So I end up here, right? Then I'm gonna jump up with just 6 mm, and then I'm gonna move to the right. Make sure that you draw a line that intersects with the circle, just exceed the circle, right? And escape. So I already got the first line. Then I'm gonna draw another line, but from this point I'm gonna drop down with 6 mm and enter. Then I'm gonna draw a horizontal line. Make sure that in all of this case so far I activated the ortho mode and it's still working, right? And click inside the circle. So now I don't need this line in the middle. I draw this line in the red line. It is not in the drawing. I just draw this one to assist me to locate the midpoint, and I don't need it anymore. So I'm gonna delete this line. Then I'm gonna use the trim command and press enter. Then I'm gonna trim this extra portion, and keep in mind that this portion in the middle is not exist of the circle. This is the cut circle, the portion of the circle, right? Also, this line is not in the drawing. This line is not in the drawing. Make sense? I've done of the trim, press enter. So we end up with this shape. If you just compare the two drawings, they are identical. Nothing else that we can include to this drawing except some other notation things, dimensions, like the center lines. We're gonna discuss these things in a later time. The objective for now is just to draw the visible lines, which are the main lines of this drawing, without adding the dimensions to the drawing. Make sense? So this is a very simple example, and in the next videos basically, and the next meeting, we're gonna consider the tangencies, and we're gonna cover more details on how we can create drawing that include curves that tangent to lines or tangent to circles. We're gonna practice this thing by hand, then we're gonna consider it using AutoCAD. This is gonna be through the next meeting. Okay, so that's it for today.